Joining us in studio, as I said in the swipe up video, is the man, the myth, the legend, Chris Jericho. Thanks for joining us, man.
Thanks, man. If I was a myth, though, I'd be kind of like the Sasquatch or the Loch Ness Monster. Like, I'm actually here.
You are. That's
right?
true. You
so
are
the
here.
myth has been solved. Is it all you thought it was going to be?
So far, so good.
Or a whole lot less?
I don't know. Let me tell you at the end of the show.
There's a song in Canada by a band called Sweeney Todd. Well, it's in the world, but they're from Canada, and it's called Roxy Roller. Have you ever heard it? It's a killer tune from the 70s.
It's a Roxy song that I don't know.
Roller.
No.
Yeah, go on Spotify and listen to it. It's a real cool, groovy. It's from a Canadian band. And Canada has a bunch of music and a bunch of bands that nobody in the States has ever heard of that are huge there. So if you go to Canada and Roxy Roller, everyone would go, oh, that's the best song ever. So you got a cool name.
I feel like this is a scene out of Baby Driver.
It could be.
At the diner.
That's all. I'm all about that, man.
The movie's awesome, dude.
Great
yeah,
movie.
yeah, you're a movie buff too. That's another reason. Because I remember.
I am.
Yeah, I know. Back in the day, so Chris had come on the show with our buddy Nick Mundy when
That
it was a
son of a
Schmoes.
bitch.
He's a real bastard.
Totally
What a
hate
dick.
him. Can't stand him.
Hate him.
Yeah, what I found out when we were off the air is that so Jen Sturger, who has made you aware of the movie Trivia Schmodown, and she does all the posts and she's doing a lot of stuff with you guys now at AEW.
Yeah, she was there on Saturday.
She was, and so that's how you met her through Nick Mundy as well. Mm-hmm. Awesome. So you tell me, look, I got to go right off the bat here. I got to talk about AEW, man, because we worked together a long time ago in 2001 when I was at WWE, and then
You were there?
I was a writer. Yeah,
No kidding.
And
gosh, there's been like 500 writers there over the years.
I know.
How long did you last?
Gone.
Not
gone.
very.
Gone.
Not
No, gone
very.
after about 2 months. But the reason I bring that up is I listened to all the stuff that you did with John Moxley on your show, and I listened to that interview, and it was right around that time to when they started to bring in the writers, and then it looked. So when I was there, they still gave, like, for example, yourself. I approached you about a couple things, gave you some ideas. Like, yeah, well, I'm going to go this way with it. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't sticking by scripts. It was ideas.
I probably crumpled up the paper and threw it at you.
Exactly what you did. No, you were.
I do that.
Yeah, but you
Really?
did you really?
Well, because when new writers come in, they're very, giddy and they want to just do stuff. And like, I'm not a guy that ever takes somebody's promo written down because nobody knows what you're going to say better than you, and I have that freedom, so I'd like to intimidate them when they first come in, like, hello, Mr. Jericho, my name is Dave and I'm the new writer, and here's my idea for your promo. Oh, right on. Crumple it up, throw it in his face, walk away while everyone else is just howling, and poor Dave's like, I don't think he likes me.
Yeah.
But
No, you
that
didn't.
poor guy.
It's funny though.
It's part of the hazing.
Wow.
It's part of the hazing. But what you said was it was an idea to have you and Jeff Hardy and the Hardy Boys go more heel and do this thing. You're like, I'm on my own right now. I don't want to join up with anybody else too. Thanks, and you sent me on my way.
Okay.
But when you guys were talking about that inside of the room itself with John. It's that it has changed into this thing now to where the wrestlers have lost their voice over at WWE. Is that accurate?
Well, I mean, it's the way that the business has changed. But like I said, like, it's hard for newer guys when you come in because you have to play by the rules, and that's kind of the way WWE does their business. Is they have writers. They've adapted kind of a Hollywood mentality where it's like an episode of Friends, and here's your script. But the difference is, wrestling is a very strange animal. It's not fish nor fowl. It's not a sport. It's not straight entertainment. It's not real. It's not pretend. It's a combination of everything. So to give a guy who's basically when you're a character in wrestling, for me, the best characters are your own real personality turned up to the nth degree. So if someone's going to try and adapt what my promo is going to be, you're never going to do it because only I know what I would say and what I would do in my head.
Right.
In the WWE now, with new guys coming in, you don't have that freedom to say no. Here's your promo, and you got to try and play along. And you watch some of the stuff where it's like, I'm going to eviscerate you, and I'm going to desecrate you. Like, who talks like that?
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to kick your ass. Fine, I'm going to eviscerate you. Is that you're going to take out a saw and Art the Clown me? And is this what's going to happen on Monday Night Raw, PG-13? I don't think so. So, I mean, that's one of the cool things when I went to AEW. I did a promo interview in the ring on Saturday, and it was the first interview in the ring that I've had on TV in 20 years where there was no script, there was no approved verbiage. I hate that word verbiage. It's such a WWE word. And it was just, I didn't know what I was going to say. And it was a little bit scary because you're live without a net. Now, I've been doing this for a long time. Of course I can do it, but you don't get the chance to do that in WWE. Right. So you do lose a little bit of your creative freedom of the way that they do things now.
But when you say that, though, when you hear a guy like you, if I'm working there and Jericho's going to go cut a promo, we don't know what he's going to say. All right, it's Jericho. But the newer guys coming in to AEW, is that a bit risky to give them, or do you, does someone like yourself
It
work
could be,
with
but
them?
that's how you find your voice, and you do have to work with them. You do. But I mean, it's the famous Austin 316 wasn't a written line. It's something he just threw out there that caught on. So I think there's a happy medium. You should have somebody guiding you if you're new and learning, but no one should ever be writing words and putting them in your mouth in this business. Like I said, it's not like a movie where you show up and here's your script and Chris Jericho's playing, Art Shamsky, the bank manager, and the Baby Driver 2, and stop or I'll shoot, whatever it's going to be. That sounds like a good start for Baby Driver 2. If you guys are listening,
it should be, yeah.
Baby Driver 2, stop or I'll shoot, and then wackiness ensues. But so I think that you have to be able to understand who your character is to really connect with the audience, and that's the secret to getting over in wrestling or in music or in as an actor.
Yeah.
The best performers are ones that you can feel and you enjoy seeing them, and that's what show business is.
So if you were coming up now, because you're saying the kids don't have the same opportunity over at WWE, would it be completely different for your career, or what?
It would. I think so, because, like I said, and this is not a cut down of WWE. It's just the way things are there. It's the way that they do the business there. So you will go and you'll get your script from a writer who's trying to get inside your head. And what you have to do when you're first starting, or even now, after I've been doing this for 30 years, you have to take what you're given and make it good. Not every time you get to do what you want. Not every time things go the way you want it to go within a match or within a promo or whatever it may be. You have to take what you're given and do the best you can with it to get it over, what we say. So it is a little bit of a challenge for younger guys, but they're going to have to figure it out for themselves the same way that I did, the same way that anybody ever did, because you're not going to get held by the hand and led through it, right? You got to be able to take the bull by the proverbial horns and make it work.
Well, one of the things that you guys have been doing over at AEW already is like the hype for wrestling fans that were missing. I think a lot of, like you're talking about, the originality for wrestlers to really show who they are, be themselves. It's starting to pop there already. There are some things that I was curious from you for what you've seen already in these shows since the announcement has come out. Are there things that you know that you're very proud of? Are there things like, okay, like there was a lot of criticism with like the chair, the headshot that Rhodes took. Is that stuff that we're going to continue to see, or was that more like get people talking? Like, what was the
I think it was just a mistake.
It was a mistake.
It's wrestling, right? Things happen. It's like a live stunt show. So some things go wrong. And that's when if people use the F word, meaning fake, I hate that word because there's nothing really fake about it. I mean, you're putting on a show, but it's not like, if you're in a movie and I'm going to hit you with a chair, you stop it, stuntman comes in, you got a rubber chair, take 2, take 3, take 5, take 10, add the sound effect later. We don't do that. You get one swing of a chair, and if it hits you in the head and cuts you open, that's what happens. I mean, the other night I did a thing with the Hangman with Adam Page, and I beat him down, and I was wearing black sneakers instead of boots, and the soles are thicker. So when I went to kick him, I kicked him right in the face, split him open, blood everywhere, huge black eye. Not supposed to happen, but it happens. That's just the nature of the game.
If it was planned and somebody had come to you and asked you about it, what would you have said?
For what?
With the headshot. If they had planned that, if not for you to do it, but if they had said, is this a good idea? Is this a good business opportunity? Will this get eyes and ears on us? Would you have said it was a good idea to do?
If I could predict the future and know that he was going to get cut open, anytime that we call them happy accidents, like with Hangman getting busted open, and the next day it's like, make sure you take a lot of pictures and put it up on social media because it's real. This is like, once again, when you get the naysayers, like, oh, it's not, nothing happens in wrestling, it's just a show, and then somebody gets, a huge, giant black eye, you want to take advantage of that, as crazy as that sounds. Like one time I got my tooth snapped in half by a ladder, and instead of going right to the dentist, I waited till the following day so I could be on TV on Monday night showing my snapped tooth, because you want people to see that, to know that it's not all fun and games. So when that stuff happens, as long as somebody doesn't get seriously hurt, like I said, it's a happy accident. So if someone was going to do that to me and I was going to know, okay, you're going to need 12 stitches, but it's going to add, $1 million in revenue to people who want to see your match, all right, I'll take it.
Yeah.
That's fine. I got scars all over from stuff that has happened like that.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, because of that, and because so many people are now talking about AEW, and the television deal begins in November.
October, November. It's in the fall. I know that for sure.
And it's gearing up, and all the buzz is there. And already it seems like that WWE is starting to have some answers. Whether it's the counter programming that they did with you guys over the weekend, whether it's the it looks like they're getting rid of the PG stuff, and they're going to go a little bit more adult for the going back to kind of like the Attitude Era-ish. The Paul Heyman and Bischoff, the rumors about all that stuff happening. That's kind of competition to take you back to like the WCW versus Raw days, where it gets you more excited to let's really go for this thing?
Well, I mean, it's good to have. I think competition is kind of a big word because you don't compete with a worldwide juggernaut like WWE, but I think it's good to have an alternative, give people an option, because there hasn't been that for 20-odd years, right? So when you have that, automatically it's better for the fans, creates a huge buzz for our company, and we're selling 12,000 tickets in 5 minutes in Chicago for August 31st, and we did it for Vegas and this, that, and the other thing. Also, and here's the best part, it's good for the wrestlers, for the boys and girls themselves. And the moment I signed with WWE, I think it took them by surprise, even though I told them I was going to do it. I think they're like, okay, go ahead, do it. And then when I did it, it's like, what? You fucking did it? And I think right off the bat, the rule over the next week or so is that everybody under contract gets double their salary if they re-sign their contracts today for 5 years.
Right.
So that nobody can get out earlier.
Yeah.
So if you're going on that aspect, everybody in the WWE made money just because I signed with AEW. So they all owe me a giant thank you.
Have you gotten any thank yous from them?
A couple, but I don't think people really realize. I think deep down they do. There's been a couple guys that have said, thank you, but I think they all realize, and it's not just me, myself, but the fact that AEW exists at all. And it's funny because when my dad played in the NHL for 10 years, and in 1972, Bobby Hull from the Chicago Blackhawks signed with a new hockey league called the WHA for $1 million. And when he signed, he was the top guy in the league, and the moment he left, all the rest of the players in the NHL automatically got raises to not go. My dad went from $35,000 a year to $100,000 a year just to not jump to the WHA. So here we are, 45 years later, and Jericho did the same thing that Bobby Hull did. It's just very strange and funny to think about that, and to think that now WWE realizes what's going on, and it's a war to them.
Yeah,
and to us, it's not a war. I know it's going to be a war. I don't think the company AEW realizes it. But this is the way it is. You're encroaching on this turf that the McMahons have owned for the last 20 years, and they don't like it. Yeah,
and the difference is where you guys are just, as you're building out the product, trying to tell the stories, building out the league, really what it is too. And that's the one thing for me as a wrestling fan that I think is lost from WWE is, and I heard JR talking about this also, is championships, in my opinion, don't mean shit anymore in WWE. They really, like, anybody can get it at any given time. If you're on Raw, someone can say, you know what, tonight I'm going to challenge because one of the writers came up with in the back that I'm supposed to challenge, and if they win, it happens. I mean, it changed back. Brock Lesnar again took the Universal Championship. Do you have any thoughts on the fact that they gave it to him again?
I mean, like I said, I don't really. I don't have time to watch a lot of wrestling. I've seen enough wrestling over the last 30 years. I was at the Stones last night, so I missed the pay-per-view completely. Too busy watching Mick Jagger kill it at 75 years old.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So, hey man, that's their thing. It's got nothing to do with me. And if you like it or don't like it, I always say if you don't like it, then don't watch. If you want to complain about it, well, wrestling fans are a lot like Star Wars fans and Kiss fans. They hate everything, but they love everything.
Right.
They'll watch every single one and just bitch about everything the whole time. So I always just look at it like, just enjoy the show. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if there's some kind of a plan or some kind of an end game to Brock getting the title, just watch the show.
See how it plays out.
If I stopped watching Star Wars after Empire Strikes Back, I'd be pretty pissed off.
Right.
But guess what? Return of the Jedi came out and everything got righted again.
Right.
So it's a story that they're telling. And you have to buckle down and go for the whole ride. You can't get off after one show and be angry about it.
Right.
You know?
Going back to you calling it a war, I'm curious if that's how you're looking at it. Where do you see the landscape in 5 years, 10 years? How do you see it looking?
Well, see, once again, a war just by proxy, it is what it is. You know, I think what we're doing is being very smart with the fact that we understand our place. We know that we're not going to sell 15,000 tickets for every show because right now there's a huge buzz. It's very new, and the shows have been very sporadic. We've had 3 shows so far, and the next one's not till August 31st. So in the meantime and in between time, one of my favorite sayings from the 80s wrestling leagues, in the meantime and in between time, I think that once we start going weekly, that we're going to do smaller venues. We're not going to go into LA and do the Staples Center. I think we'll go into LA and do, the Olympic Auditorium if it was still here, or the Palladium down in Hollywood, or some like 3,000 to 5,000 seat venue. Pack it out, sell it out, make it look good. Because if you start trying to go head to head with them in those venues, it's not going to look great on TV. So that's one thing that I think we understand, that we're going to grow accordingly. We don't have our heads up our asses saying, we sold out 3 shows in 5 minutes. Like, oh my gosh, that's right now. I think in 3 years and 5 years, the end game is to not worry about what WWE is doing or what New Japan is doing or what anybody else is doing. Let's worry about AEW and build our company, because we got a lot of guys to build. Because if you're going to a nationwide wrestling audience, they know Chris Jericho, they know Jim Ross, Jon Moxley, Dustin Rhodes. They might remember Cody, probably Cody. Other than that, there's really a whole new collection of guys. Now, of course, the wrestling fan hardcores know the Bucks and Kenny Omega and Pentagon and Phoenix, but we now have to introduce them to a nationwide audience and get them over one by one. You can't put 40 new guys on TV and just go, here, guys, get over. We have to take our time to build everybody properly one by one.
Well, let me ask you about that, though, too, because even the WCW back in the day did exactly that. You were one of the guys that were the newer guys that were able to pop. But because of yourself and Moxley and Rhodes, were you guys obviously looking into bringing in more people? There's rumors you guys have talked about, or even out there, that you've talked to CM Punk. Is that something that's still... Would you like to see CM Punk in AEW?
Once again, don't confuse. I'm not one of the EVP guys.
You have influence, though. You could have conversations.
If they asked me, I'd tell them, but I haven't been asked about CM Punk. Do we need him? No. Yeah. Would it be a huge pop to get him? Yes. I don't know, man. I don't know what his attitude or mindset is, but I think our roster is jam-packed right now, so we're not looking to headhunt the WWE, and we never were, and that's one of the things that's funny about the guys getting all this, the double salaries and all that stuff. We didn't want to be WCW in '98 or Impact TNA in 2011, where you're just bringing in a lot of old WWE guys. Right. We don't want that. We have enough guys that no one's ever seen before, and that's what we want to do. We've got a lot of young guys like Jungle Boy, MJF. Both those guys are 23 years old. That appeals to a different demographic. Like, my daughters are 12. They don't like wrestling, but they like Jungle Boy. I mean, they love Riverdale, so they watch Luke Perry. They like Jack Perry. But they like the fact that here's a young guy, good-looking guy, but they're almost in the same age group, or at least they can have a crush on a 23-year-old kid. Yeah. WWE doesn't have 23-year-old kids. They put them in NXT, and 5 years later, when they're 27, 28, they come up. We wanted to really focus on the younger demographic, which I think is missing in wrestling. The teenage heartthrobs that they used to have in every wrestling territory up until over the last 10 years in WWE.
It's longevity, too.
Yeah.
Those big names that you named, a lot of men. Do you have any idea what the plans are for women, if there's going to be a huge draw for a big name, or if you're going to build from the ground up?
Well, you got to build from the ground up, right? Because once again, nobody's getting out of WWE. So any huge names they might have, if it's a Sasha Banks or Ronda Rousey or Charlotte Flair or Becky Lynch, even if they wanted to come to AEW, you're under contract for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. That's a long time. Right. But there's a lot of great women performers out there. There's a couple that we have our eyes on that are working for other companies. But then within our own world already, I think we have a dozen women signed from all around the world, and also with a big component of the Japanese girls, which is something that hasn't really been seen here before. But once again, we have to get all of them over, so I don't even know what their names are.
Right.
If I don't know what their names are, then the person in the crowd doesn't. But the thing is, like, it's just like 205 Live. They're still having a problem where they put, like I said, 30 new guys on one show once a week. Here, guys, it's hard to build them all at once. So we're going to have to really start focusing, okay, for the next month, let's just build this one Joshi girl, the Japanese girls, and not put 6 of them out there where you don't know which one is which. We have to build them one at a time. That's my suggestion and opinion. But women's wrestling is a big thing. It's a big deal now, and we have definitely a lot of great performers on that side of things in AEW as well.
With the contracts aside, if you could have one woman wrestler join AEW, who would it be?
Tessa Blanchard. She's from Impact, and once again, not known in the WWE world, but she's a killer. She's amazing. From the WWE, I mean, you can't go wrong with Charlotte.
Yeah.
I think Becky Lynch is great too. But if you're talking about somebody that we might be able to get, I think Tessa's something that we might be able to do that.
Cool. Looking forward to it.
So let's talk about a little bit and I actually really want to talk about your podcast because it's
Talk is Jericho.
Yeah, Talk is Jericho. How long have you been doing that show for?
It'll be 6 years in December.
And because you used to be with Podcast One, you moved over now.
I went with Westwood One now.
Westwood One now. Yeah. Okay, too. So I mean, like again, that's where I recently heard that interview with Moxley, and that's great because you're a very personal guy, and you get a lot of just that conversations right after the big pay-per-view to get all that stuff too. And he wasn't doing a lot of interviews.
That was his first interview. He wanted to do it on Talk is Jericho, and the reason for that is I don't have any questions when I do my podcast. It's just a conversation. Because if I met you guys, at a bar or something, I wouldn't pull out Roxy, like you just would start talking, right?
Yeah.
And it's got a great reputation, not just in wrestling though, because my show is not wrestling specific. That would drive me fucking crazy. Yeah. There's a lot of rock and roll. I got 25 Rock and Roll Hall of Famers so far. A lot of paranormal elements. A lot of I did a great watch along with Kevin Smith for the Bad News Bears, which was a blast. A lot of that sort of stuff. Classic album clashes where I pit two great records by the same band against each other and see which one is best. So I like the pop culture element of it, along with the wrestling style. So every week I have two shows, and like for example, this week on Wednesday it's Nikki Novak, who I know you guys know.
Yeah.
We're doing a late summer movie preview. She knows everything about movies. I know nothing, so it's a funny dynamic. And then on Friday I've got Joey Ryan on, the King of Dong style. Yeah. So that's the way I like to do it. Mix it up, and people never know what they're going to get, which is why they keep tuning in and just hear really natural, cool conversations.
Well, that's why I love doing this show, because for that example alone, because Schmoes know as much as I loved it, it was very movie specific to where like I can have someone like you on this show because I'm a wrestling fan, I'm an MMA fan, I like TV, I like all this. We just want to shoot the shit because there were things I knew I wanted to ask you, but it's like also one of those, because of what you do with your show, just talk and see where it goes. And I think that's more interesting to the listener and the viewer in general.
Well, that's the secret to podcasts is the fly on the wall element,
right?
And that's why people love them. And it's one thing I started 6 years ago and really was able to get a good fan base. Now, this is not a joke. You guys might know this, but this is real. You can Google it. There's over 700,000 podcasts in the world. Yeah. 700,000. A lot of those are, Johnny Schwartz in his basement or whatever. But
I like that one though,
dude. If you can be, I like Johnny Schwartz. He's a firecracker. But if you can get a good fan base, and then something like, for example, the Moxley show just went through the roof, and when you get a big show like that did like over 1 million downloads, it raises the rest of my shows to where on Canada Day I put on a podcast about this band that no one's going to know here, like I mentioned earlier, but in Canada they're legendary. They're called the Tragically Hip. They play stadiums multiple nights. The lead singer was an icon, passed away of brain cancer a couple years ago. It's Canada's biggest band, bigger than Rush. I said, I'm going to do a Canada Day about the Tragically Hip. No one's going to listen to it. It did over 100,000 because of the focus on Talk is Jericho now.
Right.
I'm curious because one of my closest friends is Sean Waltman, and he always is telling me how he doesn't want to bother anybody, ask them to come on the show, do anything that they don't otherwise want to do. Is that with everybody? Do you get nervous reaching out to your friends saying, come on my show, or do they reach out to you trying to come on?
I mean, it's getting your friends on is always easy. Now, anybody from the WWE is banned from doing my podcast.
Is that true?
Yeah, it's true.
From who?
From the top.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's fine. I get it.
Yeah.
But to me, the reason why I wanted to have a podcast is twofold. One, you mentioned your friends. How often do you get a chance to sit down with your friend and have a good conversation for an hour? It's not a lot of times. Friends that you see once in a while, you might see them for 10 minutes, or if you're at a festival with 10 bands playing, you might run into your bro and talk for a couple minutes, or if you're on set with somebody. But to really sit down and have a good conversation, it's very hard to do. So this gives me a reason to do that. B, it gives me a chance to meet people that I always wanted to meet. Or have people that I know that I would like to know more. Paul Stanley and William Shatner and these type of guys. If you are good and have a good podcast that draws, then people start calling me. I got a call from Iron Maiden the other day. They don't do any interviews. They don't have to. They sell it every show. But they always like having one of their guys on Talk is Jericho just as a blanket interview. Here's the interview for the tour.
Yeah.
There you go. You got it. So that's kind of cool to have that reputation.
Well, they're also big music fans. So they know that when they go there, they're shooting the shit with someone who loves music.
And you're not going to get asked stupid questions.
Right.
I don't want the controversial statements or people bearing each other or any of that stuff. I remember when Slash came on a couple years ago before the Guns N' Roses reunion. He's like, "Can we just not talk about Guns N' Roses?" I'm like, "Dude, I got Slash. I don't give two shits about Guns N' Roses right now. Right. I want to talk about dinosaurs and horror movies, which is what he's into." Which we talked about for an hour. Then we started talking about the Stones. Then we started talking about when Guns N' Roses opened for the Stones and almost broke up on stage. Now I got him naturally talking about Guns N' Roses.
Yeah.
If someone gets there on their own and wants to be involved, you'll get the best stories. I'm sure a million guys interviewed him at the time. So when are you getting back together with Guns N' Roses and Axl? That shuts you down.
He's just done with it.
You don't want to be involved anymore, right? So I think if you get a good reputation of being a guy that people like to talk to and you have fun doing it, then that's why my show is doing well.
What's your favorite Stones song?
Well, last night, it's always Miss You. I mean, that's great, especially live. But Midnight Rambler is just crazy live. It was awesome.
I saw my dad. So I saw yesterday, not too long ago. I'm more of a Stones guy than I'm a Beatles guy, but it was fun to watch that and recognizing all the songs. But people kept telling me, I was like, yeah, more of a Stones. We had that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
My dad took me to see the Stones. We were like '94 when I saw him, and even back then, watching Jagger moving around, I can only imagine. He's
75.
Crazy.
And Charlie Watts, the drummer, 78. He looks like a ventriloquist dummy on stage. He never changed his face. But that guy is rock solid. Never missed a beat. Like that, they were fucking great. Like not just for old guys, for anybody. And I was just thinking about this, the Stones. Like they're not a band. They're a cultural event. Like in New Orleans, like if let's say the Louisiana Art Festival was coming, or Shakespeare in the Park, or whatever, you go down the street and on the street lamps, there's like all the ads, like all the flags downtown, where they do it in L.A. too, like the L.A. Film Fest. When the Stones come, it's the Rolling Stones. Mm-hmm. It's a cultural event that comes to town. I think I was actually on the plane today flying here because I just saw them yesterday in New Orleans and flew straight here to come visit with you wonderful people.
Thank you.
Yeah, awesome.
And I was just thinking, how sad is it going to be to live in a world when the Stones finally don't exist?
I know.
You know, and McCartney too, but Paul is Paul. That's a guy.
Yeah.
The Stones are the Stones.
They're still together, part of the legendary thing.
The greatest rock and roll band. Never broke up. Always continued. Never had a casino fair, state fair era of their career. It's always been stadiums, arenas. And people come together. Like I was looking last night, I was talking to my wife, like look at all the young, like, you know, the girls here, like hot girls and young kids and teenagers and early 20s. Like the Stones, they transcend all of it.
Well, because it's because of the things that you can use there. If you put their song in a movie today, like whether it's a Marvel movie, an independent film, it would work because it's that type of music transfers over. It never gets old.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
And I'll transition to this. The Doors are my all-time favorite band too, and
that's cool.
That's always the band to me where people say if you could see it would be Hollywood Bowl, going to see Morrison, doing the whole thing, and probably stoned out of my face watching it. Do you have if you could go back in time, watch any band in their prime? It could be the Stones at a certain time, but is there any particular band you'd go back in time to go watch?
I mean, I think it would have to be because you talk about Stones. I'm a Beatles guy.
You're a Beatles guy, okay.
But I'm also a Stones guy. They're pretty much one half dozen others.
It's not Yankees, Red Sox.
Well, I'm not a baseball guy. I'm from Canada. So.
Winnipeg Blue Bombers, eh?
I would say put me on the rooftop on Abbey Road when the Beatles did the last show.
Yeah.
And not down on the ground because no one could see them from the ground. I want to be up top like one of the guys sitting on the side. Like if I could have that, I think that'd be great. I mean, Van Halen at the Whiskey in 1978.
Yeah.
You know, Kiss in the Coventry in 1974. Like catch a band that you really like when they were first starting out. You know, that would be really cool to me as well. But yeah, I would go for Beatles on top of Abbey Road.
That's awesome. Roxy, you got one?
Well, you know, I've been on this Chris Cornell phase where I just can't even kick it. Soundgarden, but also Nirvana. I always wish that I saw them.
Yeah, for sure.
Nirvana at Nebworth in '94. Did you see that when Cobain came on stage dressed as an old lady?
Of course.
It's such a great freaking. I was such a metal guy in the '80s, and not like hair metal, which was cool. But I'm talking Metallica and Maiden and Ozzy and Dio and Anthrax. So when they got when we went transitioned from the 80s to 91, 92, and all those bands started getting pushed out by basically Cobain and Nirvana, I hated them. I hated Nirvana because it was killing my bands. I never got an appreciation for them until about 10 years later, to where it still bugs me that I was the perfect age group to be influenced and be into Nirvana, because I was 21, 22, 23 when they were. But I just was so heavy metal. I'm fucking metal, man. Forget about grunge.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, also a huge Beatles fan. Cobain is all Black Sabbath and Beatles.
Yeah,
That's what Nirvana is. That's what, Smashing Pumpkins is. That's what Soundgarden is. I just didn't see it at the time.
Didn't accept it.
Didn't accept it. And now I go back and it's just like, it's genius stuff, and it's almost like rediscovering this music from 25 years ago. I just wish I would have appreciated it more then and not have been so up my own ass with the heavy metal is the law.
That happens to when you're younger. You try to like, again, even if we went back into wrestling, things that you probably did 20 years ago. You said, shit, I would have done that all over again if I could have.
Yeah, sure, yeah. But actually, it's weird for wrestling. I don't know if I would have, because I think my path was pretty almost the last of the Mohicans, the way that I came in the business, where I went from territory to territory and country to country. Like I never got to WWE until 1999, 9 years into the business, 9 years into the job.
What did they tell you? You were too small? Is that what it was?
Not really. No one ever told me you're too small. Okay. I was too small. Like
I just say that because Vince
90,
back then was like really going after all the big guys.
But you're talking about 1996, 97, 98. Once actually talk about X-Pac, much respect to him, because he was the first guy that came in 93 or 94 as a small guy and was able to become a star. He was a real pioneer, him and Shawn Michaels as well. Yeah. But in 90, I was too small for wrestling, for what was going on. Like you mentioned, Hogan and Jake the Snake. If you weren't 6'5", 280, jacked to the gills, you weren't going to really be a big star. I was 5'11" and 200 pounds. But I realized early on, I can't be the biggest guy in the show, but I have the biggest personality and the biggest charisma. And that's what I've worked on. Then, when I went to Mexico and Japan, now I'm not small anymore. Now I'm actually kind of big. I'm one of the bigger guys, especially in Mexico. And it's funny because my boss from Mexico, Paco Alonso, just died last week. And he was the guy that was very instrumental in my career, because he brought me into Mexico City in 93 to the WWE of Mexico, called CMLL. And in 1 week, made me into a legit main event star. Wow. 1 week, because he put me in there with the right guys in the main event on 2 big shows, and I did good. I had to throw the ball when he gave it to me. Bring it. But I did. And that right off the bat. And when people go, it takes a while to make stars, bullshit. Because in 1 week, this guy took a no-name kid from Canada and made me into a legit 22-year-old teen heartthrob on the cover of the magazines, mobbed outside the frickin' arenas. It was like Beatlemania. I'm not exaggerating, but it was all because the company, a.k.a. Paco, just orchestrated it perfectly. Called the magazines, put my name was Corazon de Leon, Lionheart. Put Corazon de Leon on the cover. Put Corazon de Leon in the main event. Make Corazon de Leon T-shirts and sell them at the arena by next week. All of that was perfectly orchestrated. So you could do that in this day and age as well. There's just a real big kind of stigma that you can't, but I say that you can.
Well, it goes back to the question I kind of went through earlier as far as the championships go, right? Because when I was growing up and watching, I remember WrestleMania 4 is one of my favorite, because it brought legitimacy.
Which was 4?
4 was the tournament when Savage won the tournament. Right. And
Trump Plaza.
Yeah. But the reason why, because it was after Hogan had that legendary 4 or 5 year run, whatever it was. He finally lost a championship. Who's going to win it? Savage finally goes over as a face. And watching all that, it just brought legitimacy to the championship, because guys would hold the title for like a year and then lose it. So how are you guys going to be treating as championships in regards to how many, division wise, will they count as far as, will there be rankings? Will it be half of it more sport and a mix of entertainment, or because right now I think WWE is more of the entertainment than it is sport?
One of the things I know for sure, because I'm not in those meetings, but I do know that Tony Khan, who's the owner of AEW, he's also one of the kind of, I don't know if he's one of the pioneers, but he's one of kind of the leading analytics experts in the NFL, not just for Jacksonville, but for all the teams. He's got, I think, some kind of a company that deals with the analytics. So he really wants to make wins and losses count.
Love that.
Now, how do you do that within the world of wrestling, showbiz? I don't know. But it's something different, and I'm sure he has it all in his head, because this guy, he knows everything about wrestling.
He's a big fan, right?
Not just a big fan. Once again, like the analytical side, almost
expert.
Yeah, almost like a savant. Like
Yeah.
knows every date. Like, oh, no, April 3rd, 1999 is when you worked with Juventud Guerrera from San Antonio Nitro. And
Shit, that's awesome.
Like stuff like that. Like I don't remember anything that I've done really.
Right.
But he has all of that info in his head, and I think he wants to use some of these information, these facts that he has to make, like I said, wins and losses are going to be a big deal.
I'll tell you why that's exciting to me too, because if you go back into back with the WCW, is that one, and you probably know this way, more than I do, just things that I hear, but it's what you see what Bischoff did and the things, the struggles that he had with like some of the suits that didn't get wrestling, and that probably hurt the business tremendously. Plus other stuff, obviously, but when you have someone in the main guy who's a wrestling fanatic, and like you say, an analyst, that's got to, that people don't realize how important that is.
Yeah, and like I said, how's it going to work? I don't know because we're not doing it yet. But I
Yeah.
know at least it's something different. And if you're going to, once again, be an alternative to WWE, you can't copy them.
Right.
WWE's WWE. You don't need a carbon copy or a watered down version. We have to do our own thing, which we have been doing and will continue to do. And I think that element of introduction of the wins and losses and that sort of thing, it's going to be really interesting to do it and keep track of it. But I'm sure that he has it all organized and, like I said, in his head.
A couple of times you've mentioned meetings that you weren't a part of. Which meetings are you allowed to be a part of, and which meetings are you not asked to be a part
Well,
of?
I don't think it's allowed. It's just that like there's 4 guys that are the executive vice presidents, and there's been a lot of ballyhoo about that.
Right.
I don't want to have anything to do with that. I just want to do my gig, and I don't want to be sitting in meetings and writing stuff. And like that's not my thing. I'm a performer. I'm in front of the camera. Obviously, when my stuff is discussed, it's discussed with me, and I have the final say. And also a lot of Tony's got the final say, but I've got a lot of input into it. And I think everything I've done so far, I've pretty much written it, or at least written parts of it, and rearrange certain things so it makes more sense. So am I allowed to? I'm allowed to be in all the meetings. Which ones do I choose to go to? At this point, none of them, unless I'm involved. It's my stuff, in which case I'll talk to the guys and we'll figure it out. If they ask me my opinion on anything, I would be happy to give it to them, but we haven't had that issue yet.
The other thing is because you're performing in your band all the time too. So you're moving. I mean, is this one of the reasons why you didn't? Many reasons, maybe not signing with WWE again, but you also have a lot more freedom because there's a lot of traveling with WWE. Is there going to be?
Yeah, I mean, once again, it was the creative freedom. It was the amount of dates. Was a big factor in why I signed with AEW, because Fozzy is really hot right now, and we've got a lot of momentum. So we're recording a new record, and when it comes out, we're on Sony Music now, and they want to give it a big push and a big, give it a big, a big rollout for the record and everything. So
why the fuck do you want to be in business meetings when you could be out good?
playing rock and roll,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, like I said, and to me, that if I was into that, I'd be there, and if they asked me to, I'd be there. But for me, I'd rather just stay on the outside and worry about my gig, which is better because I can focus on my stuff, and they don't have to worry about it as much.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Kenny Omega and you have had some great matches already, man. 2 of them.
Thank you.
Yeah, they've been fantastic to watch. You guys going to save the 3rd one for the TV deal?
I would think so. I mean, we don't have any other shows before that. And the next show is me versus Hangman for
Right.
the AEW Championship,
Yep.
and Kenny's versus John Moxley, the former Dean Ambrose. And then I think the next show after that is going to be the TV, like we said, October, November, wherever that may be. So, yeah, I would like to see it maybe happen 6 months, a year. There's no need to rush it. We've got that match in our back pocket. And that's why we wanted to do it for the very first AEW show. And people are like, why don't you save that match? It's like, you don't save anything for your first show.
Right. You want to give it all.
You never get a second chance to make a first impression. So we knew we wanted to start with the biggest match we possibly had. And we did that. So now we can save the 3rd one till it's right.
Because that match had everything. Because it had just electrifying. You guys gave it everything. Dude, you're 25 years old in that ring again too. I was really impressed with.
Yeah, I've been pretty lucky. I mean, one of these days I'll explode in a puff of dust, but until then, I'm doing okay.
Don't put that out in the universe.
No, but you could tell you guys were going at it. You could tell how well you guys are comfortable with each other. But then the ending was with Moxie. The way that came out is there was rumors people didn't really know, but it was nice and surprising. And you look forward to more events like that. You said it's a company that's learning itself, knowing itself testing its stars.
Well, and the thing is too, it's like, for example, like Metallica.
Yeah.
I came into Metallica in 1984. They started in '83, so I basically grew up with that band, and we got old together. Went through all the same things and went through life, and then obviously they're a few years older. But I feel such a real connection to Metallica because I was there from the beginning. I think that's one of the reasons why AEW is very popular, and a lot of people are super excited about it because they're growing with us.
Right.
You're part of something. It's not WWE is WWE. Whether you go to the show or not, it's not going to matter. If you come to an AEW show, it matters because we want you there, and we need everybody to tell their friends and tell more friends. And if you're kind of behind it, you're like, this is my company.
I guess that's kind of the point that I was trying to make before with remembering it more because you and Kenny, I know you guys have fought twice. Right,
Yeah.
It's not like 80 different times. And was it at SmackDown? Was it Raw? I don't know, but I remember it
Right.
because there's those two. And it goes back to what I was talking about with that Savage thing. It's like Savage and Hogan. I know they fought at WrestleMania 5 a year afterwards because it was a big. It almost felt like boxing.
Mega
almost.
powers explode. Yeah,
exactly. All that stuff. So that makes and I'm wondering if Tony and those guys that's the creative that they're going to go with.
Well, I think that's the reason why I wanted to work with Kenny in the first place. Was I felt in the Tokyo Dome when we worked last year, it was a match nobody thought was going to happen. So it was kind of a pro wrestling equivalent of Mayweather and McGregor.
Yeah.
You never thought you were going to see it. How could it possibly happen? Jericho's in WWE. Kenny's in New Japan. There's no way this is going to work out. When it did, it popped a big number both in Japan and then worldwide, and especially over here in the States on New Japan streaming service. So that's a big show fight. And the same thing we did for the first AEW show.
Yeah.
Another big show fight that popped a huge number, over 100,000 buys. So now we know that we have a money-making feud and a match that people are interested in. Once again, there's no reason to throw it away because it is very much a big show feel.
Promote it up, but
Yeah.
Japan, you mentioned Japan, and I think that didn't Moxley went right over to Japan after he debuted in AEW, right?
Yeah.
So the conversation I was having around here actually was, how does that work? Isn't it like risky though to let you guys going over to Japan because it gets the freedom of it? But like, what if you go over to Japan, you get hurt, and then it fucks up the deal?
I don't know, man. Like I said, I went there afterwards too and had one match, and
Yeah.
you always think about that.
Yeah.
But I think that's one of the things that Mox wanted to do when he signed. I think he wanted to work the G1 in Japan, the big tournament, the famous tournament. He's there right now.
Yeah. I just think of Tony Khan. I'm nervous as hell.
I guess so. I mean,
Yeah.
you could probably say you can't work anywhere but for me, but maybe Mox went, well, then I don't want to do that. I want
Yeah.
to work these other places. So everyone's got their own special things. I don't want to take any chances, but I still love working in Japan. There's a couple matches more that I wanted to have there. I'll probably do one more match with them, and then we'll see. But other than that, I'm pretty much AEW full time at this point.
Let's talk Fozzy, man. So what's the next show? Where are you guys going?
We just did a show. It was really cool. We did a show in Mansfield, Ohio, by the prison where they filmed The Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah.
It was a big
Wow.
festival there. So right beside the prison, you go inside and it's now haunted. Like they do ghost tours and all that stuff. And later on at night, dude, here they are. Here comes the orbs.
That's
No
cool.
joke, orbs everywhere. Like there's
Wow.
spirits and shit in there. But we did that show, and then we got a couple shows with Nickelback in August. And then we do a tour in September of the West Coast that actually we play in LA with Iron Maiden.
Oh, wow.
At the Bank of California Stadium. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That was actually one of the
It's a
best.
different mix, Nickelback and Iron Maiden, though, too.
That's
Yeah.
one thing about our band is that we can appeal to both sides.
Yeah.
You want us to be more melodic, we can do that. We can also be very heavy. We can be a little bit proggy with some of the stuff we have. But the coolest day of my life was, well, one of the coolest days of my life. I shouldn't say the coolest. We were in New Zealand on tour with Fozzy. I woke up in the morning to an email from Iron Maiden asking us to open a stadium in LA, and then 3 hours later got an email asking if I wanted to be in the new Jay and Silent Bob movie.
Which is
Pretty good day.
really good day. And I'm
Not
glad,
too shabby.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. We just had Jay Muse in here recently.
Right on.
Roxy and Jay are in a movie together.
Oh,
and,
cool. Is it the one he
Madness
made?
in the Meth Idea.
Yeah. Right on.
Yeah, and Kevin is another guy that he and I have talked many times. We're going to get him on Schmodown. He wants to play in a match. But he said that you have a cameo in that movie. You're doing some.
It's actually not even a cameo. It's a pretty good part. Like
Is it?
It's a good scene. It should be a good 2 or 3 minutes depending on how it's cut. But it's a pretty cool role. I'm not supposed to say what it is, but when you see it, it's like, oh, that's a little bit against type. It's a real evil asshole, which Kevin likes. He put me in another movie, did a horror anthology that hasn't come out called Kilroy Was Here.
Okay.
And that one I was an asshole. And then in Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, I play another asshole. So.
How'd you meet Kevin? Did you guys
Just podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. We mutual friends, words around. Showed up at his house, while he smoked weed, and I did the interview, and I got super contact high from him. Then I
sense.
came
That sounds
over.
right.
Yeah.
How long was that show? I'm gonna guess it was 2 hours and 25 minutes.
Dude, he just goes.
I know.
He goes.
Because that's what, and
You
I,
guessed the time count.
I'll tell you why I do. Because one of my favorite interviews that I've ever heard. I'm a huge Kevin Smith fan, but I heard him on Joe Rogan, and they talked for it was like 2.5 hours, and I didn't miss a second of it.
The first time I did the show, he has a podcast studio in his house.
Yeah.
We go up there and we're talking, and it's about 6 o'clock. And as we're talking, it goes from dusk until dark, or
Yeah.
dusk. Yeah, dusk. It gets twilight, and then it's dark. So when we started, sunlight was coming through, and then as we're talking, now it's pretty much pitch black in this room, and he's super stoned, and I'm just sitting there. At one point, I'm like, should we turn on a light? He's like, oh, yeah, I didn't even think about that. It's like sitting there in the dark talking. I didn't want to interrupt him. I didn't know if it was rude to ask him to turn on a light in his own house.
No.
But then we went and did the Bad News Bears watch along, which the
Yeah.
idea is you press the play on the movie when it starts, and then we just talk about this great movie that we both grew up just loving. It's 1 hour and 27 minutes long.
Okay.
We were there for 3.5 hours.
Tell
90 minutes to 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
And part 1 was on my show, part 2 was on his
that's
show. It's
cool.
like 20 minutes here, 20 minutes there, or 2 hours here, 2 hours there. But yeah, dude, he's the best guy.
Yeah, ever.
Super nice guy. And he's one of those guys that went,
Agreed.
we got to do something someday. Now, everybody says that. He called me out of the blue. We did the movie in Sarasota. The Kilroy was here. When I was done, he goes, listen, I knew you'd be good. I didn't think you'd be this good. Anytime I do a movie, you're going to be in it from now on. Once again, I'm like, okay, sure, cool, thanks. And lo and behold,
2 in a
his
row.
next movie, I'm in it. So
Can you tell us who you shoot with?
who's in the scene?
Yeah.
With Muse. It's with Jay and Silent Bob. I don't even know what I'm supposed to say. I will say that it's really cool because every movie, Silent Bob has one speech.
Yeah.
And his speech is with me.
Wow.
So that was pretty cool, yeah.
That is really cool. Yeah, I'm so excited for that one too because as we were telling Jay, is that it Clerks to me. Clerks I love, but Mallrats was my favorite.
See, I came in on Mallrats.
Yeah, Mallrats was my favorite.
It's actually pretty funny because if you remember Rikishi,
Of course.
remember he would sit in the corner and rub his
Yeah,
ass.
yeah,
The guy
yeah.
said it was called the Stink Face.
Did that come from?
I gave it to him from Mallrats.
Oh, that's
the
so funny.
The Stink Palm.
Yeah. Stink Palm.
Stink
Michael
Palm, Stink
Rooker.
Face,
Yeah,
Michael
man,
Rooker,
for
yeah.
sure.
I met
Now
Michael
you know.
Rooker on a plane going to Japan. He was going for a comic convention. I was
Yeah.
talking to him about Mallrats. Cool guy.
He's awesome too. Yeah, he's another guy so it's great personality.
Yeah,
Great
super laid back.
personality, man, yeah.
The hard-looking guy looks like he'd kick your ass.
Yeah,
but
man.
I always just think Stink Palm. That's the best ever.
Ever. Who was the most interesting person that you met while you were podcasting?
Wow, that's hard, man. Because anybody that I have on my show is because I find them
How
interesting.
about one of instead of narrowing it down to just someone who's the best?
Okay, but my point is that I don't have people on that I don't find interesting. I'll
Yeah.
never do like a studio says you have to do this guy or this girl. Well, William Shatner is awesome.
Sure.
Great guest. And even the other day, he's like, hey, William Shatner, you should do this podcast. He goes like, no, the only podcast I do is my friend Chris Jericho's.
That's amazing.
But very interesting guest and also very curious. He'll interview you as much as you interview him.
Yeah.
And just sitting there with a guy who's like, his first movies was with Spencer Tracy in 1939. It's like, it's like Mick Jagger. It's like we have a living,
crazy.
yeah.
Yeah.
When this guy goes, that's a whole world of Hollywood that's shut down,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, we didn't even talk about Star Trek, nor did I want to, because I'm sure he's sick of it. We talk more about T.J. Hooker, which I always love that show. Heather Locklear, yeah, boy, or Heather Thomas actually. So then, no, it was Heather
Was it
Locklear.
Locklear?
Heather
Yeah,
Thomas,
yeah,
some
yeah.
fall
Yeah,
guy. Yeah.
Locklear.
So then another like Vanilla Ice. Amazing, super interesting, great guy.
Yeah.
And I knew he was cool, but just talking with him and getting into his head a bit was ridiculously cool.
But do you sometimes? Did you know him before that?
No, I'd met him once.
Okay, so that's kind of my point. Is sometimes you don't know how people are going to be
Right.
when you come in there because you're like, I hope this guy's not a dick because
Yeah.
I was a big fan of him too. So and then people kind of will shock you and say, oh, wow,
Yeah.
man, that's super interesting.
Lemmy was great because
Okay.
I knew Lemmy for years, but people was like, Lemmy's a bad interview.
Yeah.
And I went in there and he was in his house. He was looking at bass guitars on his computer. So I set up my shit and started recording. Didn't even tell him. What are you looking at? Oh, this is a 67 Paul McCartney played the Rickenbacker. And so we're talking about basses for about 10 minutes. And then like he's into the conversation and we just kept going.
Yeah.
Smoking cigarettes, drinking vodka. Like it was one of the best ones I ever did. And afterwards he said that was one of my favorite interviews I've ever had.
Yeah.
Like those type of guys are like, I love that stuff. I have I had Bob Barker on. Great.
Did you really?
Yeah.
When was that?
Crazy one.
Maybe 2 years ago.
Oh, dude, I got to listen to that one. Yeah. How insane was that?
Just these legendary
Yeah,
guys.
man.
And to me, like, I don't care if it's going to do a big rating or not. I just want to do it for myself.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah.
And most of the time, people will follow you and get into it, So, but there's been so many. Gene Simmons, great guest. Those type of guys.
I had him once too. He is wild.
He must have
wild
loved
guest.
you.
Yeah, he's great. He's great.
But just a smart, funny guy.
Yeah, his books were what made me want to interview him.
Right.
I mean, he's really
very, very intelligent. He's a great interview. I got to do that at his house, which is a Kiss museum, basically, in this room where it's like he's got every single bit of merchandise that's ever been produced by Kiss. So when you're getting a chance to go into these people's houses, even because no one in Hollywood wants to leave their house, and that's why I got a little portable rig.
Yeah.
I'll go to your house, set up. But yeah, it's like I said, it's just there's so many cool people that I've got to meet, guys and girls, that just like Method Man. I met Method Man when I did the Drop the Mic show. It's like a rap battle.
Yeah.
And he came over. I'm a big fan, and I was like, dude, like I don't know anything about Wu-Tang. I don't care. It's Method Man. I know obviously he's got a great story to tell. Went to his house in Staten Island. We had the best time. I learned all about Wu-Tang.
Yeah, he's a big movie buff too.
See, like something that you get the chance to meet these guys and learn a little bit about them. So yeah, it's been a really cool experience.
If I was going to Sophie's Choice you here too, you can only do one for the rest of your life: music, wrestling, or podcasting.
Well, it's funny because people ask me that, and I never had to choose because my goal when I was a kid was to do both.
Yeah.
I wanted to be in a rock band when I was a kid, and I wanted to be a wrestler, and I focused my whole life on doing that. If I had to give up one now, it would be wrestling. I would stick with music because we're at the point with Fozzy now where I was just getting into the WWE, where I know something is bigger around the corner. You can feel the momentum, and we've got the right people. Like when Sony Music is behind you, you know you're going to get a shot. Mm-hmm. So at this point, after everything I've done in wrestling, I could walk away from it. At one point, about 2 or 3 years ago, I thought I was going to walk away from it. But then I had this career resurgence with all this cool creative stuff, and then New Japan, and then AEW.
Right.
But yeah, I would stick with Fozzy.
Okay, and even over podcasting.
Well, I mean, podcasting is a blast too, though. But I mean, music, man. Like I said, when I was a kid, I was in a band since I was 13 years old. So it's the other dream.
Yeah.
It sounds like you've had every single major person that you wanted to have. Is there somebody that you asked on your podcast where they said no, or somebody you haven't had the chance to ask
There's
yet?
been a few. I mean, I had a little bit of an inroad for Keith Richards. Didn't come through, but I'm still always asking. Hardwick did Paul McCartney, which pisses me off. If Hardwick got him, I was like, how did you get McCartnney? So I know he does podcasts. I'd like to get him. One of those two type of guys. Someone that might be a little bit easier to get, who's never done a podcast, because I don't think he understands them, is Ozzy. I think that'd be great to have him on. I think he would have a lot of fun, because I wouldn't, like I said, my shit's all fun.
That's so funny that he doesn't get it, because his wife is on so many of them, and she totally rocks
I know.
that.
I know. I'd love to have her on, too. She's amazing.
Have
you met Ozzy
She's
before?
amazing.
Oh, yeah, I've met Ozzy quite a few times, but I mean, and then I've had Lars and Robert from Metallica on. Lars is great. I'd love to have Hetfield on, because I think he's a little bit more quiet. So you'd have to be a lot smarter to get him, whereas Lars will talk to you about anything. And I'd really like to get into James's head a bit in a good way. Mm-hmm. But I think the number one would be McCartney or Keith Richards, I think.
Awesome. If these guys wanted to check out Fozzy and want to come see you, they just go to your website?
FozzyRock.com.
FozzyRock.com. So make sure you check that. And then AEW's next show is August 31st.
August 31st at the Sears Center, Chicago. Sold that out in, I think it was 10 minutes.
That's insane.
But yeah, that's when we're going to have the very first AEW champion decided, me versus Hangman Page.
Okay.
So it's going to be a pretty big show once again. That's one good thing about, like you mentioned, the big fight feel of Jericho Omega.
Yep.
So far with AEW, all of our shows have had big fight feels because they're very, once again, sporadic at this point in time.
And you can tell that too, even when you look at what Cody Rhodes and speaking of, you brought up Star Wars, and you talk about Star Wars fan. Cody
He's
Rhodes,
a fanatic,
he's a huge Star Wars fan. But you can see the passion in those guys when how much they really want to make this thing work. So
you're talking about guys that had the opportunity to go to WWE and turned them down.
Yes.
It's like Moxley didn't even look at the contract renegotiations. He wasn't interested in doing it. And that's the same with, Kenny, the Bucks. They were trying to get those guys, Cody, Hangman, offering them, the world. And they didn't want the world. They wanted to continue doing their own thing, for better or for worse. And they've been doing this for years. The Bucks had a 7-figure deal with Hot Topic. No one knows who the Bucks are, quote unquote. Well, the 7-figure deal of a Hot Topic outside of WWE, I don't think that's ever happened before.
Yeah.
So why would they want to give that up to go work within the NXT system for a year and a half if that was the case?
Well, what was it? I mean, going with Cody, because how did they get you overall involved with AEW? Did Cody reach out to you for
No. This is all Tony Khan.
It was all Tony Khan.
Tony
first.
Khan's my boss.
Okay. I didn't know if maybe it was one of those things because of relationships. In the
No,
past,
we all signed at the same time.
Okay.
I mean, I think Cody and those guys signed on January 1st, and I signed on January 5th or 6th.
Oh, shit.
So the deals were in motion all the way through. And I've heard a dozen guys over the years that are we're starting a company. Okay, well, whatever, bullshit. Never has there been a guy. A, like you said, who's very smart about the business. B, financially has the money to spend because it costs hundreds of millions of dollars to start a wrestling company. Plus, you have all of these guys. If I would say to start a wrestling company, you need 6 to 8 top guys. 6 to 8 top guys were all available.
Yeah.
The 2 Bucks, Kenny, Cody, Jericho, Hangman. You had those 6 guys right there. Pentagon, Phoenix. Like, that's 8 guys. You could build a company around those guys. And then you get the TV deal on TNT, which hasn't happened since '99.
No.
So it's all of these factors coming together in a perfect storm, plus WWE being on a little bit of an uncool swing where people are getting pissed off at them. And they're fighting back, man. They're trying hard. They don't want to. Vince is not – he's not one to ever take anything lightly. He doesn't like this, so he's going to be fighting his ass off to not lose any ground before we start up.
Do you think that's why the move of the Paul Heyman and Bischoff
Absolutely.
thing? Yeah.
Oh,
Do
absolutely.
you think that's a good move for them as far as doing that?
I think anytime you change something up, it's good.
Yeah.
I mean, whether those guys are the right guys or they're not right guys, at least they're doing something that sends a message not just to the fans but to the talent that we're trying something different. We're not just going to sit back and let these guys encroach on our territory.
For Moxley, you said that he didn't even look at the contract, but for you, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that you did go back to WWE, give them the chance to match, and they did not.
No offer
if
at all.
If they had, what would you have done?
I don't know. It's interesting. If it would have been the exact same deal across the board, once again, if you go work for Vince, you're working for Vince. He does things his way. That's the way it goes. So I would have to resign myself to the fact that when you sign here, you can't complain now. You got to do it that way, and I know that. But there's something exciting about this kind of Wild West without a net chance to start something new. Like Chris Jericho is what he is in the wrestling world. You can say this, you can say that. Bottom line is, if I sign with the WWE, it's not going to make much. Well, it's going to make their show a lot better when I'm on it, and there'll be one match every night that's really good, and one guy who has a different mindset. But it's still WWE. If Chris Jericho signs with AEW, suddenly everybody's looking at AEW, and now we have a huge buzz, and that's what happened. I have a chance to help build a company, and if it succeeds, I'm one of the big reasons why it got off the ground, and that's the great exclamation point to a pretty cool career. If it doesn't work, then at least we tried something different. But I don't see how it's not going to work, especially with the way we're doing things right now.
Dude, congratulations on all of it. I mean, again, with Fozzy, the podcast, movies, AEW, a lot of shit going on, man. I'm really excited for you. Really, super excited that you came in and talked to us for this long.
I'm just ready for my Schmodown invite.
Oh my God!
Are you kidding? First of all, you were
Don't even say that.
No. Let me tell you the story with the Schmodown thing, because we do our version of the Royal Rumble is called the Free For All, and there's 35 competitors all coming in. At one point, you were promoting something, the band. You were doing a gig, and you were supposed to be a contestant in it, but you just couldn't do it. Publicists were going to have you come in and do it, but it was almost there. Then Jen had said that you might want to call a match. If you're ever around tomorrow. Like, whenever you're around, I would love to have you involved in the Schmodown.
For the trivia, though. Not calling a match.
Do you want to play?
Hell yeah.
Dude, 100%.
Do you need a manager?
Yes.
She's a manager.
Me and Roxy.
She's a manager. Yeah. So
What
about
Roxy
get
Rolla.
it? I mean, see, this would be
That's
a
her
tough one though
wrestling
too.
I love it.
'Cause I'm sure he'd be intimidating. He'd be like Kevin Smith wants to play too.
Dude, me versus Smith. Let's see what we can do.
I would love to get that match.
We'd have so much fun,
Are
man.
you kidding me? Let's
You should
do
have
it.
Harley be his manager.
Oh, yeah.
I would love that. Well,
Yeah.
Kevin said that he wants to do the Schmodown to promote the movie. So
Right.
how
Perfect.
Perfect.
Wow, we
One
figured
thing
it
is
out.
funny. I don't have to. My cousin's getting married this weekend in
Yeah.
Vancouver. And I got a call just 2 days ago. Kevin wants you to come to San Diego Comic-Con and do a panel. And it's
Yeah.
like, my cousin's getting married.
Yeah,
I've never been to San Diego Comic-Con. But to go with Kevin Smith on his panel, he's like the king of the Comic-Con.
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, oh, my cousin. Why did you have to how dare you book your wedding a year ago for this Saturday? How dare you?
That's unbelievable. Dude, thank you so much once again. Please, I will reach out very soon to try and make that happen.
I'm in. I'd love to do it.
Guys, Chris Jericho, once again, make sure that you go and you check out Talk is Jericho.